Hello, and welcome to the orientation to the Advanced Field Practicum. This orientation is designed for MSW II or ASAP students looking towards their Advanced Field Practicum. MSW II and ASAP students will have already completed or are in the middle of completing their Generalist Field Placement, which is the MSW I or Bachelor's Field Placement. The Advanced Field Practicum is a time where you'll become more independent and learn higher level skills. During this placement, you will have to pick an emphasis of either micro or macro practice. Macro practice in the Advanced Field Placement will be high-level administrative duties. This can be with a governmental body, a private social welfare organization, or communities. You'll learn to analyze social policy, develop and evaluate programs, potentially do grant writing. It'll look a little bit different for everyone, but these are an example of some of the types of activities you do in a macro practice. The advanced micro practice will focus on specific interventions with individuals, groups, couples, or families. This will help you implement the theories that you've learned in your classroom settings. You might be doing assessment, diagnosing, crisis intervention. It's going to look different at each micro organization, but this would be the overall focus of your placement. MSW II and ASAP field students are required to do 672 hours while in placement. These hours need to be done in consistent blocks of time that are at least 4 hours and need to be doing at least 12 hours a week. We understand if you occasionally have to go under that, maybe 1 week or 1 day where you just visit your agency for a specific meeting, or a week where you were sick and went less than 12 hours. We're flexible, but want it to consistently be 4-hour blocks of time and 12 hours per week. Most of our students will be doing their field placement over autumn and spring semesters. This means that you'll do 336 hours per semester, which is about 24 hours a week. Most of our students choose to do 3 full days at placement, but you are able to spread it out as long as you're maintaining the 4-hour blocks of time. We do allow some of our students to spread their hours out over a summer, autumn, and spring semester, but this is only for our MSW II students or part-time ASAP students. You must register for field during summer to be eligible to start collecting hours. And this allows you to spread it over 3 terms, but not to finish your field early. You have to maintain your time and placement over autumn and spring because of the evaluation course that is completed during these semesters that coordinates with your field placement. Typically, when you do your placement over 3 semesters, it breaks down your hours to about 12 to 16 hours a week, depending on if you go over breaks. If you're interested in pursuing the option of starting over a summer semester, you'll want to note that in your questionnaire under the area where it asks you to rank your preference agencies, and then also contact me, Marisa Kress, as soon as possible. I like to give an overview of everyone that you'll be working with at the college and at the agency while you're in field placement. If you've already done a field placement at OSU, this might be a bit of an overview. I'm the field placement coordinator. I handle all of the pre-placement matters. Once you're placed at your agency, our relationship shifts. The agency field instructor is typically going to be your primary point person at the agency. To be considered a field instructor, you have to have at least an MSW and be 2 years post. You might not have a social worker at your agency, and that would mean that you have an agency-identified task instructor. This person does not hold a social work degree, but would still be doing that ongoing providing of supervision, assigning tasks, and evaluating you. You also might have a secondary supervisor at your agency that may or may not be a social worker, and they may be identified as your task instructor. When you're at an agency that does not have a social worker, the college will be providing what we consider co-instruction. The co-instructor is the person that will provide ongoing social work supervision for you. You will work with both your co-instructor and your task instructor to maintain adequate supervision. Once the placement is finalized and you've started your hours, you'll be working with the field liaison from the college. That will be your ongoing support person throughout the placement. They'll do a visit each semester you're in placement, review paperwork, and just be there to answer any questions. You'll also want to make sure that you are working with your academic advisor and the MSW office to make sure your education plan is up to date and with any questions you have about coursework. You also might want to work with the career services person, Katie Justice. She's the person at the college who can help assist you with career exploration, resume writing, and interviewing preparation. I'm going to go over the placement process. If you've already done a placement here at OSU in undergrad or for your first year placement, this will be a very similar process. Please refer to this chart when you have questions about how the process will flow. The first part of the process is completing your field placement questionnaire. To find your field placement questionnaire, please log on to the database. You will notice that if you're an MSW II or an ASAP that attended our bachelor's program, you will have to switch from your MSW I or BSSW page to a new page. There's a drop-down menu when you log into the database where you will switch this. Forms will only be on each page for that identified year. So if you're currently in your MSW I and you need the questionnaire, you'll have to switch to your MSW II tab. But if you need to go back to finish your MSW I paperwork because you're currently in placement, you'll have to switch back. While you're completing your questionnaire, these are some of the things you'll want to think about. What areas or practice or areas or population interests you? What size of agency? Because a small agency and a very large agency feel very different. Do you prefer to be working mostly out of the agency or more in folks' home? Are you thinking micro or macro work? And what did you enjoy about the placement or not enjoy that you're currently in or had already completed? As an MSW II and ASAP student, we afford you the privilege to rank your preference agencies. You are allowed to rank 3 preferred agencies, but please remember that these are your preferences and we cannot guarantee these for any students. A great way to start thinking about your preferred agencies is to connect with current students about their experiences, to look through the Hands-On Central Ohio directory, to explore the field placement database. We have over 700 agencies that we work with, and you'll note that when you look in the database at the agency list, it can be a bit overwhelming. I would encourage you to use either the sort or the search functions to separate these agencies into more specific areas. If you're using the sort function, I would encourage you to start first by county and then by either practice area or primary classification. If you're using the search function, you'll want to do just a specific word. For example, if you're interested in adoption, I would just put in adoption, or maybe if you are interested in adoption and foster care, I would search for those words separately. This will really help narrow down the agencies that can or do this type of work. As always, students are not permitted to set up their own field placement and are not able to reach out to any agencies on their own. All field placements must go through the field office. We work with a very wide variety of agencies. This is a list of some of the agencies that we work with: mental health agencies, corrections, foster care, settlement houses. You'll note that under 2 of these, there's a specific contact person listed. For child welfare, most of our students will be placed under the UPP, University Partnership, or Title IV program that Linda Helm runs. If you're interested in this program, please reach out to Linda Helm for more information. And if you're interested in a school placement, you'll most likely be working with Terry Kinsway, who handles all of our school social work placements. When you're completing the questionnaire, there's some very specific things we want you to do or don't want you to do. First off, please consider this to be a professional document and represent yourself in the way that you would for any job application. Be thoughtful and complete when answering the questions. Ensure that your questionnaire reflects your interests accurately. Provide a just detailed description of your job or volunteer experiences, not just the name of the agency or the title of your position, and try and link that back to tangible social work skills. I've had folks who've just had serving jobs that they were able to very appropriately link back to social work skills. And do not disclose any criminal background or possible limitations do disclose possible limitations or criminal background in the appropriate section. You'll note that this is a section that's not shared with agencies, but it is important for us to know as it can affect the type of agencies you're able to be placed at. Some don'ts: make sure that there's no typos, spelling errors, or large grammatical errors. You'll note that if you're using Internet Explorer, there's no spell check in the database. So we encourage you to either use Google Chrome, which will have a spell check, or to copy and paste in and out of a Word document to make sure that you're catching any of those potential errors. Don't use incomplete sentences or short one-word answers. We don't want to see bullet points when you're talking about what you'd like out of a field placement. Make sure that throughout the questionnaire you're not naming specific agencies. We would ask that you only put this type of information in the area that asks for your preference, your preferred agencies. And make sure that through the narratives you're not disclosing too much personal information. It's more than all right to explain that you have a passion for a certain area because of a life experience, but keeping it short and sweet in the questionnaire is probably the best way to go. Occasionally, when students have a questionnaire that isn't ready to be sent out to agencies, we do have you meet with our career services person, Katie Justice, just to make sure that the questionnaire is as strong as it can be. There's two separate options for our master students that I always like to talk through. The first one is the employment-based placement. Sometimes we refer to this as EBP. MSW II and ASAP students are eligible to complete their placement at their place of current employment. It must be an appropriate agency, and the student must have been employed there for at least 60 days prior to applying for the employment-based placement. And the key to having it approved on the application is that your field placement and your employment must be in separate departments or programs with a separate supervisor and a separate job description. There's a place on your questionnaire where you can note if you're interested in this, and you can also reach out to me to get the application loaded to the database. There's another option that only our MSW IIs are eligible for, and that's called a single placement option, SPO. This means that you're completing your MSW II placement at the same agency as your MSW I. There's also an application for this option, and you'll need to show that you have advanced learning opportunities and are going to be learning higher level skills while you're in your second year of the placement. If you wish to pursue this, you will also be able to note it on your questionnaire, and you should contact me as soon as possible. The next step after the questionnaire is receiving your field placement referral. Prior to the start of the field, you'll receive an agency referral to your OSU email only. These will only go to your OSU email, so it is important that you check that regularly. As soon as you receive your referral, please connect with the agency to set up your pre-placement interview. A referral is a commitment that a student will at least interview with the agency. So if you're feeling unsure about the referral, know that you will still have to interview. And we ask that none of our students decline an agency at the interview. You will need to talk with me, Marisa Kress, prior to declining any agency. And no placement is considered final until both the student and the agency have completed the interview and are ready to move forward. For the pre-placement interview, please consider this a professional interview. Dress appropriately, arrive early, take your resume. Prepare for the interview by learning as much as you can about the agency. You can do that through our database or on their website or asking peers who may have been placed there. And be prepared with what questions they might ask you and what questions you would like to ask them. If you're needing examples of this, we have sample questions on the College of Social Work website. Some things to think about for an interview outfits. And I apologize to the men that this is just a female example, but I think it's a great way to show what looks good for an interview or what is appropriate and what's not. We know that business professional dress isn't always what's expected at an agency with social workers. So you can do business casual for your interview, but we want to make sure that you're dressing appropriately. So take note of some of these tips. After you've interviewed, if you're ready to move forward with your placement, you'll send me an email to confirm. All of this information that I will need will be outlined in your field placement referral. Please make sure that you send me all of this information when you confirm. Prior to starting at your agency, they may ask you to do some prerequisite requirements. This might be a health screening, a drug test, criminal background check, or ensure that you have a vehicle or insurance. If you do have something that will show up on your background, it's always a great idea to have a statement prepared about that you can provide to the agency. Having something on your background does not always disqualify you from a potential agency, but it looks great to have that statement prepared, and it's something that you'll need when you apply for the board or for your license. Also, each semester that you're in field, you will see that there's a field fee automatically added to your fees for that semester. You cannot opt out of paying this as it covers your professional liability insurance. While you're in placement, if you do not have an LSW, we require all of our MSW students to get what's called the Social Work Trainee License, the SWT. You will do this through the Ohio Board of Counselors, Social Worker, and Marriage and Family Therapists. Their website can be found here. We also have a link to the information about the SWT on our website. The college will provide a list of those that are enrolled to provide the proof of enrollment. If you currently have an SWT, you do not need to apply for a new one. It will automatically be reissued after we send our list of who's enrolled. Things to think about and review before you start field placement are the field placement manual, the field calendar, and the field code of conduct. All of these things can be accessed through our website. On the website, you'll note that there's a field education tab, and as you can see on that drop-down menu, there's quite a lot of information under it. We won't go over the manual, the calendar, or the code of conduct through this PowerPoint, but it is information that as a student in field, you are expected to know and be familiar with. The advanced field placement will progress a bit differently than your first field placement. In the beginning, expect it to feel similar with passive learning, possibly shadowing, reviewing manuals, visiting partner agencies, attending an orientation or training, but know that it will progress and you should be performing tasks independently fairly quickly. Supervision expectations. All students are required to get 1 hour of formal supervision per week, either from their field instructor, task instructor, or co-instructor, or a combination of those folks. It's going to look a little bit different for every one of our students, and you'll want to work with your supervisor to figure out what the best form or teaching method of supervision works for you both. How to maximize supervision. Make sure that you come prepared with questions to discuss and you have an agenda of things that you want to cover. Make an effort to hear feedback without becoming defensive. This is your time to learn and to take this feedback in a constructive way. If you have specific things that you want to ask about and get feedback on, make sure you ask. Initiate questions about improving your performance. Also, make sure that you're bringing your learning agreement occasionally to supervision so that you can review where you are on all your required activities. How do you maximize your time in field? Treat your placement like it's a real job. Many of our students end up getting hired from their agencies, or these become their professional network and those that will refer them for future jobs. Take advantage of any and all opportunities, being extremely open-minded and flexible. This is your time to explore your different career interests and find out what you like and don't like in a social work job. Take initiative, but definitely be willing to take guidance and feedback. Start developing that professional network. Take advantage of opportunities to meet with folks outside of your agency, with partner organizations, and really start developing that network of folks that will be with you throughout your career. Make sure you're keeping up on all of your paperwork and your required placement activities. And maintain a positive attitude and positive relationship with your field instructor. That's a huge key. You have to work with them throughout the entire placement, and so you want to recognize that they're human and they'll have good days and bad days just like we do. And focus early on about figuring out expectations and work style and what will work best for you too. These are a few of our common student concerns. I won't go too in-depth about all of them, but just want to make sure that you're aware that we know that students do have challenges throughout placement, and there are methods to work through these. If you're having an issue in field, the first thing we want you to do is talk with your field or task instructor. Then you should involve your liaison. If you reach out to your field liaison first, we're going to ask if you have had that difficult conversation with your field instructor. We are training you for what it will be like in the real world, and when you're out there in the job, you won't have a liaison to fall back on. If it can't be resolved between you and your field instructor, then we might move forward with a meeting with your liaison as well. From there, it can go a few different ways, but we always want to try and resolve things through discussion with the student and field instructor first. So, what are your next steps? Make sure that you complete all of your paperwork on time, especially the questionnaire. You'll want to be checking your OSU email regularly, as that is where your referral will be sent. Make sure you're familiar with the field policies, the manual, and any and all documents, and you are accessing any support from the college for questions or concerns leading up to your placement. Thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you throughout this process.